Hello, and welcome to Daniel Scranton's Bedtime Story audiobook. The voice you hear in the following recordings is Daniel Scranton. Daniel Scranton owns the rights to these recordings. For more information, please visit www.danielscranton.com, and for more recordings, visit his YouTube channel by searching Daniel Scranton. Chapter 1. The Unicorn Collective's Bedtime Story, titled The Faerie Sisters and Arlo the Unicorn.
We are here to offer you a bedtime story. Once upon a time, there were two fairies. They were sisters, in fact. Lily is the older sister, and Savannah is the younger fairy. They lived inside the trunk of a tree with their mother, Angela. Many people do not know this about fairies. But the truth is that they are quite normal in size. They are not tiny little beings, even if they appear to humans as tiny little beings at times so as not to frighten them. And so you can picture Savannah, Lily, and their mother in a very large tree. Living very normal lives in a thickly wooded magical forest. One morning, the girls woke up and did their usual playtime activities. They danced, they sang, they flew around the forest. And they created artwork. Fairies, just like humans, have chores that they need to do as well. And so at some point after lunch, they completed their chores and they told their mother that they were once again going to explore the forest. And their mother, Angela, said that would be fine as long as they were home by 6 o'clock for dinner. And so the two fairy sisters went off into the forest to explore. Savannah suggested that they explore an area that they hadn't been to before. in order to make their adventure more fun. Lily was a little uncertain about exploring the unknown so close to dinner time, but she agreed. And the two went into a part of the forest that was full of vines. And the vines hanging from the trees made it a darker part of the forest, harder for them to see exactly where they were going. But before they knew it, the two sisters were standing in front of a beautiful crystal cave. This crystal cave gave off an energy of magic, wonder, and excitement. And Lily and Savannah just knew that it would be safe to go inside this cave and do some more exploring. And they did. As they entered the cave, both of them were filled with such a feeling of joy that they knew they just wanted to go deeper and deeper into it. And they did. Eventually, the two fairies stumbled upon a beautiful white unicorn with large white wings. The unicorn was quietly drinking from a magical pond in the cave. This water was crystal clear, beautiful, and immense in size. The fairy girls were excited beyond belief, for they had only seen a unicorn once before as it flew through the sky. The unicorn, of course, knew they were coming, sensed them, and flew over to their location. This was a very big cave, and one that allowed for a unicorn to fly and for there to be enough water to create a pond. The unicorn landed right in front of Lily and Savannah. And he welcomed them and asked them what they wanted. Lily decided she would speak for the two of them. "We were just out adventuring," she said, "and we found your crystal cave, and we felt drawn to come inside." Savannah, grinning ear to ear, just nodded, appreciating that her older sister took charge in this situation because she was overwhelmed. The unicorn introduced himself as Arlo. And Arlo said he was happy to take them each for a ride through the sky. But he said he could only take one at a time. Savannah at this point was jumping up and down with excitement. And Arlo sensed this. He looked at her and said, "You shall go first. And what is your name, young fairy?" She said, "My name is Savannah, and I love you." Arlo got down low to the ground in the cave, and Lily helped Savannah to get on Arlo's back. Arlo walked towards the entrance of the cave, with Lily following behind, skipping with delight, but also feeling a slight tinge of jealousy that her little sister got to go first. Once they reached the forest and had exited the cave, Arlo said to Savannah, "Hold on tight to my horn and think about what you want to be. And magically you will be just that." Savannah gripped Arlo's horn tightly, closed her eyes, and imagined that she was a mermaid. And poof, instantly she transformed into a mermaid. Lily's jaw just about hit the floor as she witnessed this transformation. Arlo then began to gallop to get up speed so he could take flight. He spread his wings and began to flap them. They took flight and flew through the sky. Savannah was absolutely blown away by this experience. But there was still more to come. Arlo sensed where there would be a rainbow, and he flew right through the rainbow. Savannah could hardly believe how beautiful an experience it was to fly on the back of a unicorn in a mermaid's body through a rainbow. But she was, after all, a fairy and believed in the magic of each and every being. Her heart was racing, pounding with excitement, with glee, and her eyes were wide open with wonder as they continued to fly above the forest. Then she remembered what her mother had said about being home in time for dinner. And she told Arlo that he had better go back down to the ground and let Lily have her turn so they could be home in time for dinner. Arlo swooped down back to the forest ground where Lily was eagerly waiting. As soon as Savannah let go of the horn, she turned back into a fairy wearing a pink dress. And she slid off of Arlo's back and onto the ground. Lily and Savannah exchanged looks of delight and excitement as Arlo got down close to the ground so Lily could climb aboard for her turn. She grabbed a hold of Arlo's horn and imagined herself to be a beautiful human princess. And that's what she became. Arlo once again galloped along the forest floor, flapped his wings, and took Lily up into the sky, high above the forest. As all unicorns can, Arlo could read Lily's mind, and he knew where she had been and where she had yet to go within the forest. He knew that the most magical place that he could take Lily would be a valley where there were 5 waterfalls. And so he took her there. And as she looked down below at the beauty, she squealed with delight. Arlo flew down into the valley and flew behind each waterfall adeptly, with great precision. Lily could hardly believe how wonderful an experience this was. But she too was a fairy and knew of the magic that exists within each and every being. And so she accepted that this was not only possible, but was her creation. She also thought of her mother and dinner and told Arlo that they should go back so that she and her sister would make it home in time for what their mother was preparing them both for dinner. Arlo nodded and flew her all the way back to where Savannah was waiting, still blissed out from her experience, staring up at the sky. And soon she saw Arlo and her sister coming down to the forest floor. Lily slid off of Arlo's back, returning to her fairy form and her beautiful purple dress. The two fairies were smiling, holding hands, jumping up and down, and petting Arlo and thanking him so much for all that he had done for them and all that he had shown them. Arlo simply nodded, knowing they would be back the following day. And he turned and walked back into the crystal cave. The two sisters skipped home. Making it home just in time for their dinner. And as they sat down, and Angela poured in their bowls the carrot, beet, and potato soup that she had prepared, they told their mother of the crystal cave of Arlo and of their magical adventures. And Angela nodded knowingly. And when she did, they exclaimed, "Did you know about Arlo? Did you know about the crystal cave?" And their mother smiled and said, "Of course I did. And I knew you would find him when you were ready." Immediately, the two fairies began planning their day the next day and how they would get back to the crystal cave and ride Arlo again. Lily said, "This time I must be the one who goes first. It's only fair." And Savannah said, "You know what's not fair? You got to go for a longer time. I could feel it. I felt the amount of time that I was on Arlo's back and the amount of time that you were. And it was clear to me that you got much more time." And the two of them argued about who should go first the next day, about whether it was fair or not for Savannah to get more time on Arlo's back, flying through the sky. And once again, their beautiful mother, the wise fairy, smiled. She sat down after cleaning up the bowls of soup, and she said, "You know, once I had Lily, I felt so much joy. I felt so complete. I loved little Lily with all my heart. And yet, I knew that she would be so much better off if she had a little sister. And I knew that I could give her a little sister to play with, to have adventures with, to learn, to share with, and how to get along with." And so, a year later, Savannah was born. And I was so right. My love was not split in any way between the two of you. Lily, you were my first. And Savannah, you were my baby. And I had so much love in my heart for both of you. And I knew that you would enjoy your adventures so much more together, because when one of you was enjoying something, the other would be able to watch and appreciate how much the other was enjoying whatever she was doing. I knew that sometimes one of you would discover something like a stream or a song, and you'd want to share it with the other one. The two fairies listened intently to their mother and understood. They could see that it would be possible to have just as much joy by witnessing the other having fun and having her turn on Arlo's back. They went to bed that night, knowing that they would be dreaming of flying on their new unicorn friend. They woke up early to get their chores done right away. Their mother served them a delicious breakfast of fruit salad. And before she could even get a word out, Angela could see her two daughters holding hands and skipping out of the tree trunk. She knew they would make their way back to the crystal cave. Not a word was spoken between the two sisters as they made their way through the forest, through the vines, and they once again entered the crystal cave. They made their way through the cavernous cave to the wide opening within it. And they saw Arlo in almost the exact same place that they had seen him the previous day. And once again, he was enjoying drinking his water from the beautiful magical pond. He flew over to the fairies, and he looked at each of them knowingly, because, of course, he could read their minds. And he said to them, "Which one of you is going to go first today?" Savannah insisted that Lily go first, and that Lily have more time than she got on Arlo's back that day. But Lily insisted that Savannah go first, and that Savannah get the most time on Arlo's back. And then they looked at each other and they laughed and laughed. And Arlo was pleased. He nodded. He knew that they had gotten exactly what they needed from their experience the day before. And then Arlo opened his mouth, and out came the sound of 12 singing crystal bowls, the most beautiful sound that the two fairy girls had ever heard. And from the back of the cave trotted a beautiful female unicorn. She made her way over to Arlo and the two fairy girls. And when she did, she introduced herself. "Arlo has told me a lot about you," she said. "He knew you would be back, and so did I. I told him that if the two of you could learn to share, and could learn to share in each other's joy and excitement, then I would emerge from the back of the cave so that the two of you could ride at the same time." All the fairies could say was thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you some more. Two unicorns got close to the ground. The two fairies climbed aboard. Lily on Krista, Savannah on Arlo. And the unicorns trotted them out to the front of the cave. Once again, they grabbed onto the unicorn's horns and imagined themselves as magical creatures. Lily wanted to be a Bigfoot, and Savannah wanted to be a dragon. And of course, they turned into those magical creatures right away. They almost immediately were lifted up by the galloping unicorns. And as they flew through the air, the two sisters looked at each other and laughed and laughed and laughed. And the two unicorns smiled, for they knew that this was just the beginning of their adventures with these two wonderful fairies. And of course, they had many divine, beautiful places to show the sisters over the many, many years ahead that they would fly as a foursome. That is the end of this bedtime story. We are the Unicorn Collective, and we love you all. And we hope that you find the story heart-opening and a reminder to each and every one of you that no matter how limited something might seem, there is always more within this infinite universe of ours. Goodbye for now.